All right, guys. Hello, hello. Welcome to the show. I have people waiting in the green room, going to be joining us in just a little bit. But let's get started. We are going to be talking about three separate things today. We are going to be talking about speaking the truth in love. There's actually a lot to unpack. And we're going to be talking about whether or not women and men can just be friends. And we're going to be discussing whether women should stay in the home. Let me just let them know. I'll let them in soon. Okay, perfect. All right, guys. So make sure when you come in, you let me know your city and state, even if you are watching on the replay, and comment replay if you are watching on the replay. It's always interesting to see who is watching and when. Sorry about that, guys. I forgot it messes up my screen. Give me just a second. All right, there we go. All right, so just so you know, as he's coming in, a couple of reminders. I have a book, if you have not gotten it already. I noticed a bunch of you got it last week. I have two books, one for women. It's First Date 101, A Man's Guide to Dating a Man. And it is an interview that I did with a bunch of people, a bunch of guys, and asked them what it is that they like and dislike on the first date. Totally forgot I can set this up. Sorry guys, hang on just 1 second. Let me just change this here. There we go. What was I trying to say? Oh, so I asked a bunch of guys what they liked, what they didn't like on a first date, and the things that they had in common I collectively put into a book and entitled it First Date 101. It's a man's guide to dating a man, because men know what men like. Then we have Why Women Love A-Holes, and this one is a favorite of mine because it explains to men why women go for certain guys. Now, mind you, these are women who are not healed, okay? But there's something about the bad boy that women go for. And so, you know, the ladies, we are sick of having the option of the bad boy or the simp. We want the healthy masculine man, which is in the middle, okay? Pendulum swings both ways. We want the center. So that is going to teach you how to be a healthy masculine man. And I've got a lot more content coming on masculine energy. There are 12 of you watching here. Oh, and I forgot to pin my comment. No wonder you didn't know. You guys can watch on YouTube. I would greatly appreciate it. You can see I pinned the comment here. Just go to chasingyonci.com. chasingyonci.com. youtube.com/Chasing Yonci, or just type in Chasing Yonci on YouTube and you can join the conversation. Please join there because Instagram does not take care of content creators. And they actually, sorry guys, talk to Instagram real quick. They actually took my ability to get badges off. So I can't even take badges because I put that video of the woman falling off the stripper pole and apparently I'm promoting violence. So y'all, if you can come on YouTube, it'd be very helpful. YouTube always takes care of content creators. So you guys could watch over there. That would be fantastic. Yes, you can get in the green room. Just hit the link. It should be in your email. Just click it on your, click the link on your email. You can come in the green room. All right, so let's get started. Mike, are you ready to go? Oh, and by the way, drop your city and state. The new people in the room, drop your city and state and let me know where you're watching from. I got one of my favorites, Mike. I love it. He's the first one here. And so we're going to get a lot of his opinions, which is awesome because, you know, we have to be polite and share the stage later. So welcome, Mr. Perez. Thank you for coming.
You're very welcome. It's an honor to be a panelist again, and the only panelist, and because I don't see anybody else on my screen.
Not yet.
And also, you are starting off very quickly. No preamble today.
Yeah, I actually was going to, but I ended up running behind, and I was like, oh, crap. And so I didn't even have my notes, my normal stuff I pushed. But actually, I'm really glad you said it because there is something that's super important. And I didn't even have I usually have my little sign up on my phone. I'm just all discombobulated because there was this thing that you're supposed to be able to do on Instagram where you do a live and it can have a graphic up. And the person who showed it to me, it worked on her phone and didn't work on mine. So I'm just scrambling right now. But I did want to say this, which you reminded me of. we are going to be active very soon in my Facebook group. I have neglected it for a long time just because I've had so much going on with Instagram and YouTube. But I really want to get back to having these conversations where we're like in the streets, we're in the trenches, talking to men and women, because it's one thing to have a quick little back and forth in an Instagram comment section, but to be able to talk live like this, where you're getting whole sentences, you're hearing the tone of voice, you're making eye contact, I feel like that's where you really get the rich conversation. And so we've been doing that for the last 7 years in my private Facebook group, but I'm bringing it to Yonci and Co. So anybody who wants to join the conversation, this is still going to happen on YouTube, where we're formally having this once a month, but on a regular basis on Facebook offline. Well, it's online in the sense that it's on Facebook, but it's offline in the sense it's not promoted anywhere publicly. Make sure you guys do that, and you can join by going through Patreon/Yonci. Patreon.com/Yonci, and you can see all the tiers there. But we're going to be doing that. There's going to be private links sent out for Zoom, and we're going to get back to how we used to do, where we just hashed it out super, super casually. So there's my preamble for you. And we're going to take this graphic off the screen. I still got my books on there. Please hit the like button if you guys have not. It looks like all but 3 of you have done that already. And we have one person shouted out their city, Columbus, Ohio. Oh, and Ida says, hey, Mike. Hey, Yonci. And hey, Tiana. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. All right, you guys, coming over to YouTube, please. I was so bummed they took my badges away because apparently I was inciting violence with my my video that I made. So, wah, wah, wah. All right, so we're going to get into... Oh, I thought I was taking that graphic away. Whoops. There we go. Hang on, guys. Sorry. I was trying to get this thing. There we go. Okay. I don't know why my graphics are all wonky. So let's talk about the first topic, telling the truth in love. And as much as I love you, I'm like, shoot, this is the worst one to start with, because you and I are going to agree with everything. I already know we're going to agree with everything on this segment, which makes for a less entertaining segment, but I'm sure we're still going to be able to make it entertaining. But this is what I want to unpack, okay? There are people, and I'm looking for somebody specifically who disagrees with me. I'm going to say and Mike, because I already know, based on the word of God, you're going to agree. But somebody who disagrees with telling the truth in love, meaning, do you think that it doesn't matter the delivery? Does the delivery just not matter? It's the truth should just stand on its own. Delivery is inconsequential. Or do you think that the delivery matters? That's essentially the question that I have for right now. We have seen, I won't get into names, but there are content creators who are extremely... I don't even want to say direct, because I think you can be very direct, but they're very no chaser, and there are a lot of strong opinions that are given, and it leaves a lot of people feeling unloved. And so what is your thought about the stance for somebody to say, it doesn't matter how I say it, it's not how you say it, it's just what you say that matters. People should just be able to take it for what it is and move on. What is your thought regarding that? I know I said a lot, but...
Well, basically, telling the truth in love means maturity on the part of the communicator. And it means that they understand that timing is everything. It means that they understand the after effects of emotional wounds that you can give them. It also means that they understand that we are supposed to address behaviors and not the value of the person. It basically means that you honor and you respect the humanity in each and every one of us. Letting people process information in smaller segments allows for better conversation and more frequent conversations. And it allows the other person to reflect as well. So giving them everything straight, and everything all at once actually is not the best way to have to build trust and bonds with the other person, because you are also responsible for the wounds that you give them, and you're also responsible for your part of the growth in the relationship.
There was something that you said towards the beginning where you said, focus on the behavior and not the person. And by the way, hi Montoya, we're going to get to you. Can you read that one again? Because I feel like that really needs to be punched up.
What I was saying is that a skilled communicator or a mature person, the more mature person, should always go towards talking about the behaviors that are causing discontent in the relationship, and not actually speaking in a way that attacks the person so that they feel that you are diminishing their value as a human being and the value that they bring to the relationship itself.
I think that it's so important what you said. Everything was amazing, but that one really stuck out because I look at it like, go with me, this is going to be a really wonky metaphor, but we as the person would be the person, and then our actions are like, let's just say an object we can hold in our hand. Let's just say it's a stick. If I speak about the stick, which is detached from the person, it allows that person to keep their self-esteem, like you said, or the feeling like their own personal value is not being attacked. And it's so funny because I was just having this conversation with my son. I was saying what I've noticed with doing couples counseling, it always is a problem when the person criticizes the actual person themselves. Instead of saying, Mike, you know what? I know you love smoking your cigar. I'm making this up, you guys. I know you love smoking your cigars, but when you do, it always gets in my hair and it causes me to have asthma. I don't say, Mike, you're the most self-centered person. You don't care about me. You never consider my feelings. I'm only speaking to the smoking. If I speak to the action, it does not assume what Mike is thinking, what he's not thinking, putting allegations out there about his character. And I'm getting a message saying that it's not getting, YouTube isn't getting enough to stream, so there's going to be buffering. So I apologize, guys, if there is buffering. But I think that's really important. Montoya, do you want to jump in? What is your stance when it comes to delivery? Does it matter how we deliver the message, or should the truth be able to just stand on its own, no matter how the person says it?
Right. I mean, our ancestor Maya Angelou said it best. You know what I mean? When she says, people always remember how you made them feel. Oh. You know what I mean? And so, I mean, and I'm doing a terrible paraphrase of her famous quote, if you will. And I know that quote served me a lot because in my circle of friends, and especially when I was younger, I was the friend you come to when you are ready for the truth, right? And so, as Mike said, when you are, I think he said skilled communicator, and I would say for me, that would include mature communicator, because as a young man, I'm like, it's the truth, so what does it matter? I definitely moved like that for a lot of my years, and then one of my best friends literally became like my sister. And one time I harmed her with, just being who I am and what I'm known for.
Right.
But it mattered to me because she was close to me or whatever. But initially I kind of blew it off. Like, well, it's the truth. I don't understand.
Right.
You know what I mean? As a matter of fact, I had let her down. And to give just a short version, I had let her down. So I felt bad about letting her down. But my truth was I can't change it now. So I kind of gave a response of, okay, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And it was like, that was the moment where I finally started figuring out I have to master tact in being honest. And I feel like in that time, because I always wanted to be a good communicator, and to a degree, my friends even respected that I would always give them the truth, if you will. But sometimes they would save it for when they were really ready.
It's a catch-22, yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? So it was like I appreciated that I played that role, but over the years, I feel like I've tried to become the skilled communicator that Mike talked about, to where now I am constantly aware of how is this going to come across. Because here's the thing I figured out, and I'll be quiet. The thing I figured out the most is if you miss on that part, the communication becomes null and void.
Exactly. That was why I was hoping we could, punch and you hit it right in the head. I had this debate with somebody and I said, let's go backwards and ask yourself, what is the goal? And is the goal for you to take the truth, imagine it's a volleyball or any kind of object, and are you trying to hand it to the other person? Is that the goal? Or is the goal for you to look amazing? Because there's a friend I have, and I love his honesty, because I said, you know what, I might not agree with you, but at least I can say you always are transparent. And he said, girl, I cannot do what you do, because I would just relish in just tearing these people apart. You see some, he said, you see some stupid comments and you're just like, da, da. And I'm like, but you know, right. He's like, oh, I would be just like salivating, like, gotcha. And I said, but respectfully, that's the difference. I don't see it as a victory if I can rip someone else apart. If I crush them with my argument, that's not a win for me. But for someone else, that might be the win. I crushed them, they walked away, tail between their legs, I annihilated them. Versus...
When you start this thing, though, what they're missing, even in the annihilation, is their message was missed.
But they don't care. They just want that ego, like.
Well, that's for them then.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's why I realized it comes down to.
Only for them then, because at that point,
it's not about the truth.
Communication. So then, but what they're missing in their ego boast, if you will, and they feel like they annihilated them, they actually think the person got their truth.
Yes.
They're thinking that they're walking away because, well, I gave them the truth.
And it shut them up.
They didn't like it. What they don't realize is that person, because of how they're feeling, doesn't hear the truth at all.
At all.
They're just walking away hurt on the approach.
Right.
So they're bragging, not knowing they actually didn't get your truth. If they were to revisit that person the next day, they'll be shocked to find out. That person missed the whole truth.
They're in the same spot
the whole time. They'll be like, how did they? I just told them this yesterday.
Yes. Yes.
So they don't get that they missed the whole boat. You're not even getting the truth across.
Yeah. It's interesting because, you know, one of the things that I noticed, and I'm going to stereotype, I'm going to generalize, I guess I would say, but if we were to break the two genders down into logic and emotion, you would tend to have the men on the logical side. You would tend to have the women on more of the emotional side. That being said, I tend to see more men struggle with this because they're saying 1 + 1 does equal 2. So why does it matter? Me saying it mean does not make 1 + 1 = 5. It's still 1. And this is the part that, you know, for people listening, I want to explain. And I did it on a live stream, but I didn't save it this week on Instagram. What people who are not emotionally intelligent are missing is what I say is the spirit realm. And there is something that Jesus talks about as far as stumbling blocks. They are called stumbling blocks. And I said, you know, imagine if somebody went through your house. You know, you walk around at night. Sometimes you don't turn your light on because you know your hallway like the back of your hand, right? But imagine if someone went through and put like a heavy bag down on the floor, you know, a boxing bag, a heavy bag, and just laid it across the hallway. Or boxes. You're just walking down the hallway not thinking you're going to trip, and here you go flying through the air because there's something that you stumbled on. That is such a good word picture that Jesus used, a stumbling block, because that thing, when you go flying through the air, you're not focusing on anything around you. You're too busy trying not to face plant on the ground. And then after you fall, you're worried about your knees, how they hurt, or what you ran into. And so what happens in the spirit realm is, if I offend you, you have stumbled in the spirit realm. And as you said, the person doesn't even hear the message because they're too busy trying not to face plant, and they're brushing off their knees. They're tending to the knot on their head. But because it's happening in the spirit realm, the other person can't visibly see it. And if the person speaks to it, that person can brush them off and say, you're just making a mountain out of a molehill. But in reality, they have spiritual welts and cuts and scrapes and bruises on their body. Those are just happening in the emotion.
And since you're already started quoting, I'll quote this. Jesus did say in terms of the role of communication is that I have many things to tell you, but you are not ready for it all right now. So he used small chunks, you know, and he waited for the right timing to lay it out to people.
That's really, really good. There's a verse that I'm going to share. how do I put it? Yes, it's 1 Corinthians 13. It literally says that phrase, speaking the truth in love, if I'm not mistaken, because I didn't write the whole verse down. So feel free to double check me, Mike, if you have a Bible handy. Speaking the truth in love. And this is the part that's really interesting to see on that 1 Corinthians 13. Oh, and I didn't even give the verse, so that's not helpful. But when you hear that phrase, speaking the truth in love, you still hear that it's truth. It's not speaking a version of the truth, speaking watered down. And what's so interesting is sometimes when I tell somebody, oh, you know what, watch the delivery, they say, I can't lie. And at first I was like, what does that have to do with it? Where did lying even come in this conversation? Some people genuinely think that if you do not say it brashly, then it's the equivalent of lying. And I just have to say for the record, that is just not the case. You absolutely do not have to water it down. You don't have to sugarcoat. Saying something in a kind way is not the same as sugarcoating or making it seem like it's not as big of a deal as it is. And I don't understand. I don't know that if someone really doesn't understand that or if it's just an excuse, but there are so many people who will use that as a rebuttal. And so it makes me wonder, does someone really think that if I do tell the truth in love, that means that you're not going to get the full message?
You know, it's funny that you say that because we live in a culture where we have these expressions that actually make us into flippant individuals. When we start saying, I'm keeping it 100, you know, we use the truth, you know, and we affirm each other, even in the spiritual sense or in the church, we say, you know, you know, stepping on toes and all these expressions when you talk back to the preacher. However, the preacher does use both. He does use truth in the beginning, and then at the end he applies grace. He closes out with grace. So if you are responsible, if you just tell people truth and walk away, you are still held accountable, both in the natural and in the spiritual, for leaving them wounded out there. But if you close it out with grace, you can say what you need to say, but then add, you know, some healing balm at the end. Then that's a much better way to do it.
Yeah.
But a lot of folks, you know, they speak the truth, and it's almost like, you know what, I used this example before. You have a cyst in you, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut it out, and then I'm just gonna leave you there. But a surgeon never does that. He says, okay, you got something bad in you. Let me tell you what you have. Let me get it out, and then I'm going to close up the wound. That's what a mature communicator does.
I absolutely love that. I know you were going to add something, Montoya, so please don't forget. I love that because it's a two-parter. Part of what I was explaining, you know, in the video that I did earlier, it was you have to be able to empathize, because that's that thing, nobody knows how much you care, so much you know until they know how much you care. I have found that when you are speaking, the very first thing out of your mouth often should be the empathy part. It's like you're not crazy. I know, I could see where you thought this, or I get that you thought that, Mike, you know, I get that you thought that skunk cologne was great. I'm sure you had the best intentions. Honey, let me tell you though, it's not a good fragrance for you. But if you come in with that, honoring that person, giving them the benefit of the doubt, I love to say, I'm sure you didn't mean anything by it, but I'm already letting the person know off the rip, or I hope this isn't out of place to say this, or what have you, or correct me if I'm wrong. Sometimes just coming in with that small gesture, it could be just one sentence, can make that person feel seen and not be ready to be on guard. The other thing is that a lot of times people are doing something, they're not trying to do it wrong. So that you're throwing them off balance because in their mind they were doing something good, and now you're coming and telling it's startling. So it's like they're already off kilter because of that. And then, like you said, with the balm, I love coming in almost like a grace sandwich. You give them that empathy at the beginning, and then you let them know, but you know what, moving forward, if you ever need help with this, or if you need this resource, you're coming in and explaining. Monterey, do you remember what you were going to say before? Because if I say this, it's going to take us on another, like a little bit of a detour.
I just wanted to briefly address the generalization about the men and the women, relative to being considered logical and the women being emotional. I learned what I'm about to tell you from men are from Mars, women are from Venus, specifically about communication. And so, for the most part, when I read in that book, I still agree with and feel like I've seen it in my lifetime since, reading it 20-something years ago, is the reason men struggle, when you said men seem, in your opinion, they seem to struggle with this more because of the logic part. So I would add that due to, generally speaking, logic means you kind of are more direct.
Yes.
So that's kind of how we're used to communicating with each other. Well, what happens is rarely are the genders aware of how the other gender communicates. So I always explain when I kind of give people the information in men, for men, give them that same information, because I'm just really, I think it's Stephen Cole. I forgot who wrote it, whatever. But anyway, when I give them that information, I always say, who was it?
John Gray.
John Gray. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I want to make sure you give credit. But when I was like, if I talk to a man or a woman, when I give them the information, they're like, it's always eye-opening when they see the difference in communication. And I say, now, unfortunately, I've only talked to you. So now you're going to be responsible for knowing this. Your partner still does not know this.
Right.
So the reason I'm really highlighting the reason men struggle with it is because rarely do men recognize that y'all don't communicate the same way.
Right.
So that's why they're fighting you a little bit, Yonci, saying, or when they hear in love, they're actually honest with you.
Right.
They're just hearing in love to equate to sugarcoating.
Yes.
So if you say truth and love, they're just hearing it like, well, so they hear it because you see what I want to
No, it just made you think when you started to cut you off. But if this is, I don't want to say this is like an attention deficit, but you can only help to compare. I'm not saying it's bad, okay? But compared to a man or to a woman, men tend to not be able to follow along the way a woman could, okay? I'm not saying it's better, right?
That's fair.
But as women, we talk here, and then we go here, and then here, and then there, and then we come full circle back. And the women, we just follow along.
Yeah.
With a man, his brain goes because he wants. So when you said that, it made me think this: if a guy is thinking that everyone thinks the way he thinks, he's going, the path of least resistance is the straightest line. Am I picking up what you're putting down?
Yeah.
So if I then add a flower and a sunshine and a heart to it, she might lose the potency of the message, not realizing the woman is designed to hear the flowers.
That's why I want to explain that difference to you.
It makes sense.
So it's the unawareness. So here's the other thing so what happens is another thing versus not just the truth and the wound. The other thing is at least in my opinion, when you've gotten better at understanding this. So sometimes it's not even about that you have to leave a wound. It's just you take an approach where you set up giving the truth. So you test, okay, say what's going on with you.
Yeah.
And even though this emotional response, as a man, if you will, if you're being logical and you think something's clearly wrong here, and it's like this person should have done the exact opposite of that. Well, you don't have to say it right then. You set it up to say, okay, like you said, I get where you're coming from, what's going on here, how you feel about it, or as Mike said, you give it in pieces. The reality is some days you might have to wait a day. You might have to wait a second day or whatever. Whereas the man not understanding the difference in a woman, if you will, he's thinking, I didn't tell her the truth, I let her down, but he's finna harm her because he doesn't know she needs it the way you're saying it. So if you don't, so he's doing it. That's why the men, that's why the men are pushing back against you, because they're like, how else would I communicate? Because they don't fully understand that. And I'll also say on the flip side, sometimes you can just tell me, yes, you don't like my cologne. Like that would actually work for me.
They're giving it the way
right.
they would want to receive it, and the women are giving it the way they would. Now, this is where I'm going to push back a little bit on this, okay?
Okay.
I think that directness is okay if it's not insulting. Now, here's the part where it's an issue, which that sounds so obvious. But some people say, I'm only telling the truth, and I'm going, did you though? Because, and this is where the next segment is, when judgment is attached. So if I say, I don't like your cologne, or, that's not a good cologne for you, it's not really going well with your pheromones or whatever the term is, that's just making a statement, right? It's an opinion, but it's a statement. If I then say, what is wrong with you? Did you not sample it before you bought it? Like, why would you? And you spent $75 on a 4 ounce?
I don't want none of that. Just tell me you don't like it, it'll be good.
That part.
Now, if you do the extra stuff.
All the extra.
Yeah, none of that. I wasn't saying that part. I was just saying you don't have to set it up and say. Well,
no, I'm saying people.
You ain't gotta. Yeah.
People are saying they're looking at it as those being. So if you say direct, some people are going. That includes all of it.
No.
Right, and it's like no, that's.
No.
So for me, when I say, and this is what's so funny, when I on my page, I absolutely welcome pushback. I welcome it because if enough people push me back the same way, I'm going to take a look at it and go, maybe I need to revisit this, right? Because I'm actually searching for the truth. So it always rubs me the wrong way when I tell somebody to be respectful and they go, oh, you're just sensitive. You don't like anyone disagreeing. And I'm like, oh, dear soul. You have no idea I made a platform off of people disagreeing with me. And this is where I go again. Do you really not know the difference between being disrespectful and disagreeing? It's hard for me to believe that an adult doesn't really know the difference. Do you think the person's in denial?
It's happening so much, Yonci, you might want to believe they don't know the difference. It's sad, but I also remember I have to think about your own process to why you're not like that. You went through a process to be the way you are. So if a person hasn't been through their process, unfortunately, they're settled in. This is okay. They're not BSing you. And so I'm just sharing that because it'll help you be a little less frustrated.
Okay, how about this then? Let's just say the person is, their flesh, we'll use spiritual terms, their flesh has them so deceived that they in good conscience say it and have no clue they're being rude. Why is it that if the same thing happens to them, suddenly their radar is crystal clear? It's sharp. Oh, I knew when he crossed the line, it was right there. Why is that?
Because humans by nature, we rationalize our own behavior, we empathize with ourselves, and naturally do not offer empathy to others. It's a learned process to do the same thing that you give. Like people have to learn the grace you give yourself is what you should afford to others. If people knew that, we would see way less judgment on the internet where the most judgment ever lives. But it lives because people have not been taught how to properly communicate, mature communication. And I'm not saying that they're unaware of their rudeness. Let me be clear here. I am saying that they don't quite know, like they've gotten so used to it, they're unaware of that is wrong because they lean on it was just the truth. So they're aware of the rudeness, but they're thinking, well, I just told the truth, so they actually think it's okay. So I'm not saying they're clueless. I just want to clarify that one thing you said. Okay. I wasn't suggesting that they're clueless, but they actually think it's okay.
That's why it's excusable, because I'm redeemed because I passed on the truth.
Right. So yeah, they're not clueless to the rudeness. Nah. That's why they always defend it and say, but it's the truth.
It's the truth, though. Yes, your mama is ugly. Like, bro. My God.
It's ugly, though. What?
She got cankles, too. Like, really? Oh, my goodness.
We focus a lot on we naturally focus a lot on the words that we say, and rightfully so. However, there are other dynamics, too, when you're speaking to people. You're speaking truth to people that specifically deals with gender that we often miss. And that's basically that our tone, our size as men, we're bigger. So when we come direct at a female, they it may produce a wound that a guy coming towards another guy with that energy may not produce. And some women, not all women, some women can take it. However, they were socialized. But in general, we ought to be thinking that, okay, speaking to the audience matters. Who's my audience? Okay, I'm speaking to, a woman, so I maybe need to tone it down because my deep voice and my louder voice may be coming off as a lion's roar, right? However, women have apologized to me and said, "Oh, I'm sorry that I came at you so direct or whatever." I said, "Look," it just felt like rose petals hitting me. It really wasn't harming me, some women can cross the boundaries and they know how to push those buttons. But if they haven't crossed that boundary, I just be like, okay, all right, baby, I'm listening. I hear you. Because it's really not affecting me as a man in the same way. But I certainly cannot reverse it in the same way and expect not to wound somebody.
Yes. And I think the other thing, by the way, welcome to Reginald joining in. Hello, sir. We are talking about speaking the truth in love and whether or not you have to sugarcoat or lie or hold back if you add love to the equation. And this is something that I want to encourage. I don't know how many people are content creators who are watching this, but this is something that I've noticed and I've had to learn the hard way. Not too terribly, but it was a bummer that I didn't catch it until it had happened. But when we take a stance, I'm trying to say, how do I say this succinctly? Let's just say if we see bad behavior, right? Somebody made a comment about, let's just say women being out of shape. And she made the point that nobody could disagree with, that if a person is in shape, you are more physically appealing. Anybody would know. I mean, nobody if given the choice for themselves would say obese or shape. Oh, I'm picking obese. Nobody. So we're all just honest. Everyone wants to be in shape. What I noticed with the style of communication with a lot of content creators is there's an air of haughtiness when they're talking about an area of their life, of someone's life that they don't struggle with. So let's say I have perfectly good teeth. Let's just say I was just born with it. I didn't even get them myself done. I just was born with great teeth. There's a condescending way I can speak about people who don't have their teeth corrected. Like, why would anyone do that? That should be the first investment you get in it. And when you have this attitude that puts yourself higher than the other group, and so you're putting yourself higher, but then you also don't think about why it could be that this person is there, especially if it's a universal thing. Like, again, with the weight, I don't know anyone who has crooked or yellow teeth who would say, given the choice of having super straight white teeth, oh, give me the crooked yellow. So that's an understood thing. So I think when a person is doing content, they're speaking about something that everybody wants. That is an opportunity to be even more empathetic and to even think about why it is. Because the reasons I hear people give, it's always the most asinine. Like the person's choosing that, they want that, they think it's great. And then the person who actually needs the information, they're so turned off because I want to get my teeth fixed, but you just came at me and said, oh, only ignorant people have crooked teeth or only lazy people have crooked. And you're like, you don't know my situation. I had to put my parents through a nursing program and I couldn't be selfish and focus on my teeth. And yes, I floss. And yes, you know what I'm saying? We assume and put people into categories. So I know it was a long-winded
No, that's good. I
spiel,
would like to reiterate, that's what we're talking about. We have a tendency to rationalize our own behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So like you said, if it's not an area I struggle in, I can become condescending about it, right? But if somebody were to pick on my area where I'm struggling, I would feel the same thing I'm making them feel. So I'm just kind of getting to when you're saying, why do people do that? So I look at this moment, I'm glad I was on here because I think this moment, and you mentioned the idea of content creators, it's like if they can listen to what you're saying now, it's can you provide grace? And can you realize how often it is human nature to give ourselves grace? and to rationalize our own behavior. So if you become aware of how often you do it with yourself, and you try to keep that in mind with any information you deliver, then you can do what you're talking about. So it's almost like you're teaching, in my opinion, other content creators how to not lose the very person they're trying to reach by not, in a sense, missing and not having the grace and why that person may not have it. So I think what you're talking about has to be spread throughout the internet, and more content creators definitely should take advantage of what you're talking about.
Thank you so
much. I want to circle back to something Montoya said in the beginning, which is how he learned to be a more selective in his language, right? And you can extend grace, or you can extend empathy naturally, meaning I'm just going to go forward and do it, or you can extend grace or extend empathy experientially. And until you go through something, sometimes you may never realize how your words are landing on folks until something happens to you. So, and then you start being more conscious about it. The default is you should always be conscious about it, whether you've been through that experience or not. However, those are two ways that you can extend empathy to other people.
I absolutely love that. And before I add my next point, did you have anything you wanted to add, Reginald? Or Mr. Crawley? Yeah. I like the last name.
Yeah. Sorry about that. First of all, thank you for allowing me to come on late. Good evening to you. Love your content. Mr. Perez and Mr. Smith, good evening to you. I was listening for a little bit before I actually joined in the Zoom. So a lot of good nuggets being put out there. Thank you guys also for your insight and for your level of expertise. Just as quick as I can, I think one of the biggest things that unless you guys mentioned this already, that needs to be addressed, I think a couple of things. One, the scripture says that the heart of man is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Right? So as Mr. Perez, as you were talking about, and Mr. Smith, you said before about extending grace to individuals. That's not a natural response of the human condition. In fact, extending grace to others is something that comes only by way of the Holy Spirit operating in and through us, right? Another thing that needs to be addressed is the acknowledgement that there's a difference between factual information and truth. They are not synonymous, right? One has to do more with scripture and the word of God, and then the other is just, again, factual information, things that can be proven, that take place in everyday life. The revelation of that scripture is speaking the truth in love, is that you speak truth to edify and to build up. You don't take it and use it maliciously as a weapon to destroy people or to tear people down.
I feel like that needs to breathe. You don't use the truth to tear people down. It is meant to edify. Like, that was packed. Please continue. I hope I don't make you lose your thought.
Yeah, no. So that really was the thought as a whole. Woman of God, I heard you give the example earlier. I think there's a difference between me giving a comment about a pair of shoes that someone purchased that, you know, they're not necessarily attractive, you know, maybe the color is gross, or you know, the style of the shoe is, you know, but then there's a difference between that and then what's the worst thing I can think of? Maybe someone who's like been addicted to drugs for a number of years, right? Speaking truth to whatever individual receiving said truth in those two different situations are, you know what I mean? Like one is like, if I tell you, like, I don't think your shoes are attractive, that's subjective, right? That's an opinion that I have, right? However, if you are strung out on methamphetamines or something like that, and then, you know, I come to you and I begin to talk to you and tell you that you need to get help, otherwise, you know, because you're destroying your life, and, you know, you are somewhat destroying the lives of those who love you, you know, because they're seeing you go through this. Those are two, you know, completely different things. One is subjective, the other is not. And if, you know, I mean, both can be hurtful if you're speaking to someone negatively, you know what I mean? But if I come to the person that's, you know, addicted to drugs, and I'm telling them the truth about themselves, but in a way that's not encouraging them to do a 180, then the truth does more harm than good. And that's what, you know, that scripture says when it, I mean, what it means when it says, speak the truth in love.
I definitely agree. There was I don't know if you guys are familiar with Jordan Peterson. By the way, guys, I'm trying to send out a second email because I'm aware that some people might have come since the last one. But Jordan Peterson is someone I really admire, and not only does he have just this amazing knowledge and wisdom, but his ability to speak in a way that is loving and kind is really unmatched from what I've seen. And so it's there was a gentleman who was doing a review of his video, and how do I say this? He just seemed like an angry little man. He wasn't little, but just little sounds better in this context. But he sounded this angry little man because Jordan said, I was quoted as saying this, and people thought that I was being judgmental. And he said, I'm not being judgmental. And the guy pauses the video, and he said, and I quote, I wrote this down, he said, you should judge. Obviously, Jordan can't hear him. It's a clip that he's playing. He goes, you should judge. He said, we should rub our people's noses in the truth. And he was so far, he just reminded me of a little troll man of a bridge, just shaking his little fist. You know, his energy was like that. He said, you got to call people to the carpet. And I feel like that right there is a demonic spirit. You know, like he might not have his head spinning around and, you know, the whole exorcist scene, but that is a demonic, someone who takes pleasure in rubbing someone's nose. It reminds me, that saying, rub the person's nose in it, it reminds me of that training exercise. If you guys have ever trained a dog or seen a show about that, they literally will take the dog, rub his nose in you know what, and pop him on the butt with like a rolled up newspaper to let the dog learn this is bad. If you do this, you're going to have a pain. And so to want to do that to somebody else, it shows you the state of their heart. And that's why I said at the beginning, what is the goal? Is it to pop your collar and gloat and say, I won? Or do you want to pass that truth ball? You know, you're passing the baton, pass it on to somebody else. But basically, it's like breaking the person's spirit. And I think that when a person has that desire, it's because, well, one, they don't have the Holy Spirit in them. And so they relish it. The same way you guys would probably relish crushing someone in a one-on-one game of basketball. In basketball, it's not the person's spirit that's being crushed. Yeah, it's a little ego, like, dang, might beat me by, 20 points, whatever is crazy Spurs basketball, I don't know. But you're not walking away crushed and wanting to cry into, your pillow. you might talk some smack and then go grab a beer or soda, whatever you drink. So this is the test that I want people to do. And this is kind of a little bit of a snooze fest topic, you know, because it's not as titillating. But if you're the type of person who loves to see the other person squirm, that is an indication that you have a spiritual depravity. And this is serious. And you might not ever learn until you're on the receiving end, which is what I think were you the one saying that? Sometimes it takes you going through something was that you? Okay. Sometimes it takes it happening, because you can do it where you are deceived, because the heart is deceitful. You don't realize it. But then once you do realize it, now it is on you to act better. So I just wanted to point that out. And I've noticed that there is this almost like a foaming at the mouth when I'm gently telling the truth to somebody. I compare it to a surgeon coming in with surgical precision with that scalpel, that super fine blade. And then there's that person next to me, like the Neanderthal, like, get in there. And it's like, why are you going so slowly? Why are you delicately moving around the artery? Why are you? Ah! And they just want me to just rip it open like a grizzly bear. But I thought, what's the purpose in going to a surgeon to get, let's say it's a bullet wound. You go to the surgeon to get that bullet removed, but when you leave, you're an amputee. So you just traded being lost because you don't have the truth, but now you're struggling in the spirit realm. So the people who think, what's the purpose in going in delicately? It's because you're leaving them worse than you left them. So I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I think that's really important, because there is a lot of truth out there. But because the truth is said in an unloving way, the very people who need to hear it just shut down and they don't get to receive it. And I won't say names, but there was somebody who I believe was speaking a lot of truth. And in situations where the person maybe got frustrated, or sometimes they were trying to be funny, they would take jabs at people. And there is a calling. When we are leaders, there is a calling for us to be above reproach, to take the high road. Even if someone literally slings actual mud in my face, I'm going to be annoyed. I'm going to wipe the mud off. But I pray to God I did not reach down and make a ball of mud and throw it back. That is my job, to say, this is my platform. We don't do that here, and move on. I do not want to get in the gutter with that person. So, all right, I think we have gone over that. I had some notes I forgot. I'm just going to close with this. So I want to give the how, because we've told what not to do. But I think it's important, as we were even talking about this segment, is, well, what do you do? So the first step, empathize. Empathize for the person's current situation. So we can all agree being an unwed mother is not a good look. Having 3 baby daddies is not a good look. But empathize. How does she get there? Maybe she didn't have a father. Maybe she got raped and chose to keep it. You don't know. You don't know what got this person in this situation. Maybe this person was scared of gangs, and I'm just making this up. You don't know what it could have just been that she just likes having sex. But try to come in with empathy. This will make you a better communicator and will get the point across, if your goal is to actually get the point across. The second thing is, have compassion for their pain. Let's take the obese person, okay? And Lord knows I am not in shape. Like, I have a lot of weight to lose. But if you are talking to somebody, understand their pain. Realize, man, that must really be unfortunate that because you're so overweight, you probably don't get a chance to date the type of people you want. It's probably painful moving around. Have empathy for their situation as opposed to contempt. And the next one is understanding. Understand how they are. I don't want to say delusional, but it is. It is a sense of delusion. When the person doesn't have the truth, they are in the dark. If you can back up, what is it called? Reverse engineer. If you can understand how you got into the situation, it's easier to help them out. So one example I'll give, and I'll end with this. Feminism. I'm on a kick on feminism right now. I'm always on a kick on feminism, but it's particularly right now. Instead of just coming at it and saying, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, I'm truly trying to understand where a woman in her right mind ends up in a feminist position. And so when you backtrack and you say, oh, you've been abandoned by partners. Oh, you don't know where you're going to get your money from. Oh, okay, I see how this seems like a viable option. But if you just come in saying, you have to be stupid to pick XYZ, the person's shutting down. So even if you don't agree with that, if you can go backwards and say, why? Even the guy, like I used to call him F-boys, and now it's unhealthy. The guy who's running through women, if I understand he's doing it because he has low self-esteem, and this is his dopamine hit, this is his way for 3 minutes, he feels validated, I can still find empathy for this guy. I don't condone what he's doing, but I empathize with him. So we are going to be moving on to the next, topic. So if you guys would like to share anything about that moving forward, you can. Let's see.
I would love to say, to reemphasize what you just said. Here's where what you're saying matters so much. So what happens is our dialogue is so often about the results and never about the why. And so what happens is we have this idea that if we point out the results, look at these results are so bad, you actually think you can shame that person into changing by continuing to highlight and talk about the results.
So shame doesn't work. That's not a motivator. That's not a good one.
Unless you know somebody personally, but not in this way.
I don't think it ever works.
Well, no, I think shame has its value in society.
That's true. That's true.
Society, shame has a value that I think we've lost sight of as a culture to a degree. Some, different cultures around the world.
Yes.
As individuals, like you said, just using the example of the elf boy or the 3 baby, whatever. If you just say, you're stupid for doing this, or why do you keep doing this? You actually can figure out the why quite often. And once you empathize with the why, it becomes a different conversation if it's somebody you want to help, or you smartly don't involve them in your life versus spending a bunch of time trying to shame. This is what people do, shame people for bad behavior.
Right.
Because we don't realize all we're discussing on the internet is the results.
Thank you.
We're never discussing the why. But we don't realize that all we're doing is discussing the results.
Thank you.
If you don't discuss the why, you can never talk about the results enough. There's nothing you can say about the results that's going to change that moment. But if you start thinking about the why, you can actually get to an actual solution. People are trying they think telling the truth about a result will lead to a solution. Well, if you haven't discussed the why, you have no chance at a solution.
I absolutely love it. It is so well said. And it is, okay, I see this all the time. It's like the car accident. Everyone's passing the car accident. But imagine instead of cars, everyone's gathered up in clusters, right? Oh, gee, look at that car accident. Oh, it's bad, right? Oh, yeah, it's bad. Oh, mangled, huh? Yeah, it's mangled. Look at all that. Yeah, ooh, ah. And they go to the next car accident. Look at that. Oh, that's a bag, huh? Yeah. And there's nothing productive. And I'm not going to lie, it's tempting. It's good for clicks. It's good for engagement. I could find the most asinine comments on TikTok and post them and do reaction videos. Trust me, I would probably be about 100,000 by now. I could find stuff that wouldn't even have to say anything, just put the mess up there and let people laugh and talk about it.
Hey, let me use your analogy. This is bring it all the way home.
Uh-huh.
So you say this certain intersection keeps having these accidents. So we as the crowd, we can always ride by, talk about the accidents because it's juicy.
Yep.
Luckily, engineers are behind the scenes saying, why do we keep having accidents?
That's exactly where I was going. Yep.
They'll put up a light or something that wasn't there because that's the solution. But
yes.
There's as many accidents as we have, and if you're just running around going, what? Look at all those accidents that happen. There's no solution in the result.
Yes. No, it's absolutely, and that's where I was gonna paint, was to take that, we retroactively go, and then and before I go back to that, looking at the driver and saying, you shouldn't have wrecked that car. Look, you're gonna have all these bills now. You have to pay for a new car. Really shouldn't have wrecked it. And they're like, you dumb bot. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Thank you. As he's bleeding out. But you have someone like Montoya come, you have someone like Mr. Crawley come and say, you know, what happened before you crashed? Well, there was a blinding light. Really? Was it on the right side or the left? It was on the right. Oh my gosh, I realized there's a big metal board over here that at a certain time of day, the sun's hitting it and it's causing this Oh, so guys, if you're coming around the corner, make sure you have your visor down, or if we can't take the thing down, you know, that's what I want content creators to focus on. Or if someone's coming as a commenter, ask them, how did you get in this pickle? And then what I realized with a lot of problems, it's too far gone. Like the woman who put her career over, you know, getting married and having kids. For some people, it's just too far gone, meaning her body will not make babies anymore. So in those situations, I think we still talk about the situation, but we address it to the younger generation.
Exactly. That's where we have to go.
These people are martyrs. You know, they died for their cause, but you don't have to be like this. And I think that it will help a lot of healing to happen because so many women, and even in I have to admit, unintentionally, my content was very shaming. It was like, if you didn't do this, the inference is you're an imbecile if you didn't go this way, first of all. And the second is just kind of like, well, you're here now. Like, how is that helping me? You just made me feel stupid and hopeless at the same time. Thanks, Yonci.
Yonci, let me answer your second question there, since you were going there, and let me bridge there with some things that you started off with, which is the speaking the truth in love. If we go back to the source of where that phrase came from, which is in Ephesians, it actually talks about that there is a cleansing that happens when we add that skill to our communication style. You know, it says, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every aspect the mature body of him who is the head, which is Christ. So it's not only for the other person, but it is also for us. Wow. Because we start to change and transform when we learn how to speak to other people, not brashly, but in love. Okay. And in terms of that next question, for folks that have not seen it, it's can men and women be just friends, or can men just be friends with beautiful women? Which is an interesting question there. And I would say yes and no. And why I say that, because it depends on a bunch of things you have going on in your life that you have put in place. And so if you're married to a beautiful woman or someone who is beautiful to you, then yes, you can be. If you love them and are fulfilled in your relationship, then yes, you could be friends with other women. If you pre-agree to certain boundaries, then yes, then you can have friendships with other people. If you have an accountability partner, then yes, you can be friends with beautiful women, because that accountability partner will hold you to the fire and ask you, so, you know, how are your relationships with the other gender? You know, are you being honest? Do you have emotional ties to the other gender? So that's very important. But if you are single and unattached, you have to show caution. All right. If you do not have boundaries in your life, then you should have caution. If you don't have an accountability partner, then you should use caution. So that is how I would address that particular question.
There was a statement, thank you. There was a statement made by Elliot Hulse, and it's funny because I commented on I mentioned him in my content, and there was somebody who was like, that guy is extreme. So just because someone likes something does not mean that every single thing is cosigned. I'm sure no one cosigns everything I say. But I do like a lot of the stuff that he talks about masculinity. Well, he made this statement, and it actually inspired one of the pieces of content that I put up last week. By the way, guys, if you're enjoying the show, please hit that like button if you have not already. If you're watching on your cell phone, you have to close the chat box, then hit the like and come back in. But he said this. He said, no, and I wish I had written it down verbatim, but he said, no man is just friends with a woman. He's either waiting for his opportunity to smash, and he's just lurking in the friend zone, waiting for an opportunity, or they've already explored that and realized, oh, there isn't anything here. But he said it's never just friendship. He said because the nature of a man and the nature of a woman is attraction. And so I did this study, which I messed it up because I used the term sexual attraction and people were being very literal and saying if they're not trying to have sex with her, they don't have sexual attraction. But I just meant when your eyeballs look at her, do you see attractiveness, whether you move forward or you don't? And so it ended up being like convoluted a lot with the question. But this is what he said. He said every woman should test this with the guy, which I'm not recommending this, by the way, but it's food for thought. She said every woman should invite their guy friend over super late at night, 10 o'clock, 11, whatever. Offer him something to drink. And once he gets nice and loose, say, initiate and see if he wants to have sex. Now, he goes, if the guy's like, what are you doing? Then he goes, you have a friend, which is why I say don't try it, because that would just be weird. But he said, if the guy's like, what are you doing? Then that's your friend. If he says, yeah, let's go, then that's the only way you would know. And the thing about this, the reason why I said we obviously wouldn't do it, but I wonder how much truth there is, because if you actually did it, now you've just made the friendship weird. And if he falls for the test, then it's still awkward and weird. So what are your thoughts? It was one of those interesting food for thought situations, and I will reserve my opinion of whether or not men and women can be friends after you guys have all shared yours.
I mean, Mike already told you. So, and I'm gonna say that in that situation, if he says, "What are you doing?" it's literally because he's not physically attracted to you, and he simply sees you as a friend. But if the natural physical attraction is there, he's gonna say yes, even if he's already settled on he can't anymore. So even if he's settled, isn't thinking about it, like he's just a friend, like you've called him over late to fix something at the house, like that's what the relationship is. But if you're physically attractive in that moment, he's gonna blow it just because you asked. So that's a dumb test, even for a guy who's legitimately your friend, if he's physically attracted to you. The only guy that says, "What are you doing?" is not physically attracted to you. That's it.
So this is where Elliot's point was. He said, if there is someone with at the switch of a button could be turned on by my wife, why would I want him around? Why would I want a fox in the hen house? Whether he acts it or not, he said, why would I want that around my wife?
That's a fair boundary. That's a very fair boundary. And I would think in most situations, it's not even so much that you have to have the boundary because a man might do that. But I just think respect between men and women is hopefully the household is just kind of set up that, okay, well, these are real friends, but you still kind of have like boundaries for how those people are around you.
Interacting.
Interacting or whatever. Because like Mike said, now, if this man is happy, satisfied with his wife, that man's not doing that. So that's why a lot of times couples can pull it off because generally speaking, you typically married people hang around married people typically, and single people hang around single people typically, or whatever. Now, obviously, there's been people that's messed it up in marriage too, but I'm just saying generally speaking. So because that's a reality, it's fair to have some level of boundaries. Because I think that's very typical. Let's say, you and I were married, Yonci, or whatever. If you have a guy friend that you've been friends with before me, some men can't handle that. I'm cool with that. But I'm pretty sure there's natural respect and boundaries you would provide to where I'm still not worried about it because at the end of the day, I'm trusting you.
Mm-hmm.
So I get what he's saying because that is naturally there. But I think people worry about it, in my opinion, a little too much, just from the standpoint of my trust has to be with you and only you.
So I'm going to throw one more thing in for devil's advocate, and you guys can keep this conversation going if you have anything to say. Do you think it's playing with fire to put two magnets together that have an attraction, whether people are mature and not doing it. If you don't have to have that risk, is it wiser to just eliminate the risk altogether? Meaning not having friends of the opposite sex.
Flee from temptation.
I know if I had a guy friend who got married and he said, my wife is not really cool with me being buddies with you, I'm like, peace out. No anger. It would just be like, I get that.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because give me 3 seconds, Montoya. I want to hear what
No. I want you talk.
But at the end of this, I hope we get to another question, which is, can a woman be comfortable with her man having a friendship with a beautiful woman? Because I have met women who are not, and other women who are very secure, and they're like, I know I'm fine, and I know he's mine.
See, I think there's a difference between wisdom and security. So I could be confident all I want in who I am, but I could also have respect for the devil and the flesh, meaning a respect of the danger of it. I have a healthy respect for fire. So even though I don't run around terrified, I don't have nightmares about fires, I don't stay up at night thinking about fires, I also don't take flammable things and put it within centimeters of a flame. So if let's say, for example, I'm married to a guy and he has this beautiful friend, I see where that's leaving a door open. And, I don't think it has to do with an insecurity, like, I want you to hang out with me versus hanging out with her. It doesn't have to be that. I think that energy is like money, a currency. And when you're spending money on the opposite sex, it could be dangerous. And you never know what the enemy is setting you up for. Let's say, I'm married to this guy and we have a little bit of a struggle. We're just going through a small little rough patch. And the female friend, he's like, I just want a female's perspective. And in her giving advice, she's consoling him and she's not flirting with him, but she's unintentionally giving him everything I'm not giving him because I'm going through something right now. Now the bond can start to grow. And there's already that foundation of friendship where it's like, there's a false sense of security. Oh, this is just Felicia. This is just my old college buddy. So it's not a big deal sleeping on her couch. What'd you say? What'd you say?
I have to say bye, Felicia.
I know. As soon as I said that, I was like, bye, Felicia. That name is forever ruined. But, I've seen that where the person... I don't see as many situations where the person was like this random person and they got caught up with it. It's usually the person who, we were just friends or we were just co-workers. We were just going over the, whatever. I'm just throwing it out there.
I think it's, I don't know if you remember, we did this conversation a couple years ago on the Mental Dialogue Talk Show, like specifically what we're talking about. And I don't know if you recall it.
My memory is so terrible, but I believe it.
But you're still kind of in the same position, which is okay. I just always highlight, like I get the coworker thing, being what the scenario you just said or whatever. And so I like to always distinguish the friends you had prior to the marriage. I think that is a specific group versus any new friends, any coworkers, and things of that. And the reason I think that is a specific group is because in their friendship, if there was a chance, that's what has been figured out.
But what about, I'm gonna throw you this curveball again. What about those people? And I just posted a reel about this. The girl said, when you finally give your so-and-so a chance, this woman had a best friend and it was her best friend's cousin. This is her best friend of childhood. So this means the cousin has been around forever. Because if you're really, really close with someone, you're going to go to family things.
Who's the difference? I'm missing a little bit. Who's who?
So there was two girls, and they're best friends. And the one girl has a cousin who's a guy. So the two girlfriends are best friend. Her best friend has a guy cousin. She said, I finally gave him a chance, meaning he had been wanting to get with her. And she finally gave him a chance. They fell in love and got married and have a kid now. It was this beautiful love story. So you were saying, which I figured was going to come up, but if they've already been friends, they've already figured out it's not, there's nothing there. I've heard many stories of people who, that's just Mike. That's just Montoya. And you don't see them in that light until one day,
So that scenario doesn't knock out what I'm talking about. So what I'm talking about is I've now decided to marry someone else. So like I'm not saying that long-term friends could never develop anything. That's not what I'm saying to you. What I'm saying is if you and I are long-time friends, and even if maybe I'm the one that's got my eye on you or whatever, if I get to the point where I found my wife, I'm just pointing out that I don't know. I just know I've been able to be friends with people that's never gonna be explored because we figured that out.
I just had people profess their love once I separated from my husband before, and I was like, what? I never thought.
Say it again.
I said I've had people profess their love to me when I finally became like single. When I separated from people, I was like, whoa! I did not see that coming. Right. So I just have a very different perspective.
I get that.
Go ahead, Mr. Crawley.
I was going to say, I'll speak from my own experience. So to kind of go back and answer the first question, for me personally, if it's a woman that I'm in no way physically attracted to, like, to me, there's nothing physically attractive about her, but we get along well for whatever reason, then yes, I can be friends with her. If she is my type in every way and she's physically attractive, I would say if there were parameters that, like, she lived in Europe
and she was blind. No, I'm just playing.
and we spoke sparingly, then, like, perhaps. But not if, like, there's close proximity and we're in contact every day. No, at least not for me. But then the second thing, and like Mr. Smith was just saying, now this is real life for me. I had several female friends before I had gotten married. A couple of them I had some history with. But when I met my wife, my ex-wife now, when I met my wife, I called all of them. And I said, look, I know we've been friends for X number of years, blah, blah, etc. I'll be getting married soon, and I don't think it's a good idea for us to continue our friendships, acquaintanceships, what have you. And so I cut them all off then. Now, the reason that I did that was, one, because I had bonds with these people that had been developed over a period of years. I never wanted my wife to feel like she was in competition with anybody from my past for whatever reason. Another thing was, and you touched on this too, Yonci, was I know that I always liken marriage to a garden, right? When you first start a garden, things, maybe you have grass, things are kind of bland, maybe you got some weeds you got to go pull up. And so, it takes the husband and the wife to get in their gardening clothes, slap their gloves on, roll up their sleeves, go get down on their knees and then do the work, right? And so, in the midst of that, they're going to, because the scripture says that, for this cause, a man shall leave his father and his mother, cleave unto his wife, and they being two shall become one. That process there's a lot going on in there, so we are not going to always agree on things, see eye to eye on things. There's going to be some turbulence and things like that. I didn't want for there to be a situation where we had a disagreement about whatever, Jello, I don't know, and then I just happened to call one of my female friends, and then, you know, we're talking back and forth, and then she's doing what you said, Yonci. She's giving me all this kind of advice and being, you know, sympathetic and showing empathy and all those kind of things. If it's something that ended up being worse than us having a disagreement about Jello, and then I end up at her house in her bed for whatever reason, then, you know, that's a deal breaker,
Yeah.
right? That's a complete foul. So I wanted to avoid things like that.
So the wise man sees danger afar off and avoids it.
Yeah, and give my marriage a chance right from the beginning. So when I knew that I was getting married, I went and cut all those relationships off.
I'd like to go back to boundaries for a second. Thank you, Reginald. You do have to make rules like that. In our culture, in Latino culture, there is this rule for a lot of the folks that grew up in the old country, where with couples, you befriend the husband, but you don't befriend the wife. So if you're all out at a party together, you stick to, you know, talking to the men in the party and not their wives.
That's smart.
It's actually considered disrespectful to talk to the wives. And that was very interesting as I grew to learn those unwritten rules. And even in my social media, I almost never friend the wife. I always friend the man. And every time I'm like, no, you know, he'll tell me what's going on in the household, you know, because he'll say, oh, look, me and my wife went here and went there, and our sons graduated or whatever. But that cultural boundary is a very healthy, natural boundary to have. And because of one reason that I will highlight, if I were to adjust your question, can a man be friends with a beautiful woman? I believe because of the way men are created, it's too limiting to say beautiful women. Because a man can compartmentalize his feelings, the question is, can he be friends with women in general? Because for a man, intimacy means something different than for a woman. So if a man is having problems in his relationship, okay, it doesn't matter if the woman is beautiful or not.
It's true.
People still step out.
It's true.
So we have to be very careful with it. So that's why this cultural boundary of the men need to stick to the men and not develop relationships with the women is so very important.
I like that. By the way, y'all, how come y'all never told me that I was way over time? I must have got super gung-ho.
I don't know the time.
On that first topic, Mike was nice. He was like, we're going to transition to the second topic. Good thing you did, because we probably been on hour 3 right now. Goodness gracious. I love my brothers in Christ. Okay, so we're going to move on to the last topic here. By the way, cheers. Gotta keep, I forgot. I don't have my green screen tonight, so staying hydrated. I don't have my green screen, so if I hold my cup here, you can't see it. I always found that it was making me pink. I don't know if you guys if you go back and look at any of my other videos, I literally looked pink. So now I just have to have some weird, see how it like cuts out my hand, but I feel like it's better to have a part of a body missing than being pink. So anyway, random transition, a random fact. Okay, so the last and final conversation, and by the way, guys, if you would like to be on my live stream, I have a group chat every first Monday of the month, and I bring up topics and we talk about them. Anybody can come on. There's a Zoom link, and so I email it out. And so if you want to be on, make sure you're on my email list. In the description of this video, there should be a link to opt in. If you opt in the same day, you never know if you're going to actually get the link, because I might have sent it out already earlier that day. So if you want to get on for the next one, for sure, make sure you get on today or whenever you're watching this video, those of you watching the replay. But I love having people come on and share their thoughts, okay? All right, so the last one is it better for wives to stay in the home? Now, let me give a huge disclaimer just for the question. There is something in advertising terms called good, better, best. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but you can have an option that's good. Hey, it's a good meal. This meal is better. Then you have the third option. This is the best. So it's not going to be detrimental, any of the three, but there is a scale, good, better, best. So I have to very much paint that clearly so that everybody can stay on topic. I know you guys are going to stay on topic. For everyone else joining the conversation, this is not about shaming someone who's choosing. We are saying out of these two options, which one is the best or better than the other, okay? So scenario one is the woman works outside the home and has children, and as a result, puts the children in childcare, and then comes home at the end of the evening. We all know what that looks like. If you work a 9 to 5, you're picking the kids up maybe around 6 because you still need time to get home from work to the daycare, and you're getting home probably around 6:37, which is time to eat. And if the kids are little, they need to go to bed pretty soon after that. So you have that option versus the woman who either doesn't work outside the home at all, or doesn't have a job that's outside of her homemaking job, or she has a job inside the home where she can also be with the children. So out of those two scenarios, which one would you think is the best? And by the way, for everybody who is on the panel, very flexible. You guys can come and go as you need to. Very casual. I want it to feel like a water cooler conversation. So no pressure, you guys. If you guys do have to go, you can just give me a little dip out. So what do you guys think about the woman being outside the home? Is it better for her to be at home or better for her to be outside out of those two? Ooh wee.
I don't have a prescription for this. When I was married, and this was strictly due to financial constraints. Both I and my wife worked outside of the home. The way I think about it, ideally, if things were the way, if I had my way, and I always told my wife, I wanted us to get to a place financially where I was able to take care of all of our financial obligations. And she would only have to, well, not have to work, but she would only work if it was something that she desired to do. In a scenario like that, I would personally have enjoyed if my wife was at home, and not for that whole kind of, oh, you want your wife to be at home barefoot and pregnant. No. But because we had children, as you mentioned, I trust as you know, we kind of see how the world is, how our society is. I trust my children more with my wife in our home than I trust my children, you know, in this institution, you know, basically where, I'm going to say it, I believe they're being not necessarily educated, but indoctrinated. And, you know, to what end?
Right.
So I would also throw out there just now, you know, if we look at the way our society is structured, it hasn't always been the way that it is now. So what did households look like before all these different institutions and organizations and systems and things like that were constructed and created to kind of instruct our lives and, and how we live every day. I'm a stickler for scripture, so especially when you go back and you look at ancient times, we didn't have 9 to 5s. Both parents were at home. You know what I mean? That, there's even talk about both parents were at home, and then they had people that helped with their children, because some of them, Jacob had 12 or more children.
Right.
But you needed that help. But yeah, that's how I would answer that question.
And I love that you brought up the institution. Mike, I'm sure you have something to weigh in. I'm just going to say this briefly, if that's possible. I love that you brought up the fact that the institution was not always there. It actually is very recent. I've been doing research on the idea of public school and where that came from, as opposed to before. It was just everyone homeschooled. That's what you did. There were certain things you had to learn, and you learned it, and then you went out and you learned your trade or what have you. So for a lot of people, if they don't know the background of how things came to be, their thought is this is the way. This is just how things are done, and they don't realize that there was an alternative. This was not the norm until recently. So I'm not going to go into more detail on that. Y'all do your research. Look up kindergarten. Look up Germany. I'll just leave it there. Okay? Because I got a heavy penalization on Instagram when I went too far down the rabbit hole, and I can no longer receive badges. So I'm going to stay out of the rabbit hole tonight. Mike, did you have anything that you wanted to add to the discussion about if it's better?
What I would say is that what is best is what is worked out and agreed to ahead of time, to begin with. What is best also is what honors the gifts and also the timing of the use of those gifts by the wife and mother. And we also have to assume that, well, we are making an assumption that the question is about the wife staying home for all 40 years. However, the reality is that we have to think of this in seasons and answer the question according to the seasons. If the children need more attention during a certain season, then adjustments have to be made. If the mother-in-law is present in the home, then adjustments can be made to account for that. Both those are what I have seen in my own family, where my mother in the beginning, she made sure that during the early years, she stayed home so that she can help my sister and I. And then she went into the workforce, and she went in like a beast because she was working 2 8-hour jobs until she retired. So that's just, I'm a Caribbean kid, so that's how we roll. And so, and my sister has her mother-in-law who's living in a home helping raise the kids. So therefore, the wife and mother, or her, my sister, she can go into the workplace because she has that additional dynamic. So the question also assumes that it's an either or when it can actually be a both and.
I watched a documentary today. It was really interesting. It's called Eve in Exile. And I thought that the woman gave a brilliant look at, she went back to the 1800s. She was looking at feminism. She was talking about how things progressed to where we are now. And I've had this conversation when I bring up anything about feminism, there's a lot of pushback on social media, and it's usually from women. And the sentiment, again, going back to the telling the truth in love, I had to realize what was so provoking to these women. And what it was is that, one, the idea that a job is meant to enrich you and fulfill a part of, yourself that needs to feel good. There was that. There was, two, the feeling of hands being tied. like this bill has to get paid, so what else am I supposed to do? There are a couple of dynamics that are going into place. I had to look at my own self when I was a homemaker, and I dreamed about being a homemaker. I wanted to be a homemaker. My mom made it look amazing from my perspective. And then when I got in there, I was like, not so fun. It's a real thankless job. You're not talking to adults the entire day. You have children who are literally hanging off of you, especially if you're breastfeeding. It's a luxury to go to the bathroom and shut the door, because if you have little kids, it's not safe for them to even be unsupervised for the time it takes to use the restroom. It can be so direct. So all these things that you kind of taken for granted, not having kids, you're like, wow, you don't eat your food hot because you're feeding the kid first and your plate's cold by the time you get, it's just all these things. It's not glamorous. And then if you're exemplary at what you do, no one says anything. No one seeks out the maid in the hotel, hunts her down. Where is Helga? Oh my goodness. The way she turned these beds down, the way she put them in the, oh, but no one hunts her down. Nobody sees her. They don't, she dips in, she does her job. So it's a thankless job versus a position in corporate America. You're getting, like, contrary to my husband, he was in sales. He literally had award ceremonies. There were entire award ceremonies for the sole purpose of acknowledging his accomplishments. And there were very strict metrics. You made this, he made this, you get this, he makes this. It was very cut and dry, and I'm not going to lie. I got jealous. And I was like, I want to feel like my efforts are being celebrated and I'm getting awarded trips to Jamaica. I want to feel like I'm awarded. And it was a difficult thing. Like, can you still give excellence when no one else says it, no one else sees it, except underage children and a husband who's maybe so tired to really even acknowledge it because he's so tired at the end of the day. So the thing is that he said I always tip the maid, but here's the thing. The wife gets paid. She gets paid, but a lot of times she doesn't get acknowledged. So the wife gets paid because she has a roof over her head. So that's kind of the same as tipping. It's if you have this desire to have your ego stroked, it's not about the fact you have this nice roof over your head and you don't have to work certain hours, and it's not about that. A lot of women want the esteem. And there is an esteem that comes with a job outside of a home. So I don't say this in judgment. I'm telling my story to tell on myself, that I realized that there was a lot of pride there. There was a lot of pride. And when it came down to it, I was like, I want the instant gratification of a check. I want to see that the hours that I worked directly coincided with the check that I was given. And the other thing is that I liked the fact that I could clock out. I'm done at this time. When you're a homemaker, you're never. Your baby gets sick at 3 a.m, you're on. Like, there's no off the clock. So I want to challenge women outside of saying I need the money, because that's a situation where, you know, you have to figure out how to pay your bills, and not everybody has the luxury of working from home, because some people can. Some people can work from home. But I want to challenge women and say, are we looking for prestige, if that's the right word? Are we looking for similarness, similarity to our male counterparts? Are we desiring the mammon? Are we doing this for the money? And the Bible says you can't love the Lord and mammon. And what I love about this documentary is that it talks about the value and the importance that a woman has in her home, taking care of those children, shaping their minds, being there for even as simply as if you're refreshed and in a place where you can then come and serve, and I'm going to say the word serve your husband, as opposed to being just super burnt out during the day. So just food for thought, I would like people to consider, because I think it's easy to say, oh, it's just because we need the money. But even with that, I look at Dave Ramsey's, videos. Do we really need that second car? Do we really need that 2-story house? Did we really have to go live way out in that zip code? Did we really? Or could we have cut back on a lot of do we need every Netflix, every cable, every, there's a lot of spending that we do that puts us over the top. But if we really felt like our kids were in danger, what will we cut back on to bring mama back home? So I'm gonna get off my soapbox. Jason, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're saying is a question of values, and this is what is causing a problem in our relationships and in our mental health and everything. It comes down to, are we valuing the things that God esteems as important, like love, our relationships, family, or are we valuing the things that society projects as the most valuable? Money, power, and fame, it's a key to life. Like, I won't call any names, but I remember a song back in the day, right? So if you worship money, power, and fame, then you'll go after the money, the power, and the fame as the key to life. And if both people are going after money, power, and fame, how can you really have a good relationship? Because for me to get money, power, and fame, right, then I'm not going to be with you. I'm going to be going after the big thing. And if you are going after money, power, and fame, that contract might be in Amsterdam for a concert, right? So then if my money, power, and fame, maybe I have to build, maybe I'm competing against Elon Musk, so I'm trying to go to Mars, right? So like, who's going to really work on the relationship? And then we're not going to be reading books like Gary Chapman's books, or books on, I think, how to 7 principles to make marriage work. We're going to be reading books about how to get more money, power, and fame. So what we're studying is to get the other degree or to get the doctorate, right? And if both people are studying to get the other doctorate, then who's studying the kids? Who's studying the relationship? Who's studying forgiveness? Who's even paying attention to the message? Yeah, you might show up at church once a week, but really, honestly, how did 2 hours change your life if everything you're watching is money, power, and fame? Everybody sees when, that star gets an award. Everybody sees when this person gets more power. Everybody sees when, I don't know, somebody's blasting off to Mars, right? Oh, Jeff Bezos is going to Mars, right? So now I, as a man, I'm competing against Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. And you, if you're competing against Rihanna and, and Beyonce, and you're saying you need to get that, right, or J-Lo, and you need to get that fame, or Lizzo or whoever is exalted, then who's exalting the stay-at-home mom who has great kids that are raised well, that aren't going to go out and shoot somebody, right? They feel good about themselves, right? Like, who's exalting her? Who's exalting the husband that is faithful to his wife, right? Like, these guys that are not, like, they're like, who looks at a billionaire and says, yeah, but he got divorced?
Yeah,
Look,
I love.
All of them are single.
Yeah.
All of them cheated. Almost all of them, but they're going to Mars, so they get exalted.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned who's going to exalt them, and I think this is the perfect place to close. The Bible says, "Lay up your treasures in heaven. Don't have your treasures down here where moth or rust corrupt." And I am just realizing right now that I was supposed to guest star on somebody as a live stream. I just saw something pop up my phone unrelated. It's all guest. And I was like, guest! I was supposed to be a guest. I'm 15 minutes late, so it's a good thing I'm wrapping this up. Please forgive me if you guys are watching. Anyway, what was I trying to say? So the Lord is going to give us blessings. So one of the things I want to encourage the brothers and sisters, and hopefully you guys watched that documentary because it was great. I don't have any, skin in the game, but there was Si's laughing at me. But she says at the very end, this is not glamorous. This work is not, the movement is not glamorous. Like, we're not going to be doing parades. We're not going to be having t-shirts. It's each individual person putting their head down and doing what they're supposed to do as unto the Lord. And so to that husband who is, like you said, Jason, is being faithful, there isn't an award. There isn't a beautiful award that goes on a trophy case that says, oh, Reginald was faithful for 30 years. No one's celebrating that. No one's sending, Yonci on a trip to Paris because she cleaned toilets impeccably for, all the years her kids were in school. No one's going to do that. But as believers, we have to be reminded that in this next life, we are going to be celebrated. We are going to get, or I should say, we'll be recognized for what we have done if we do it to the glory of the Lord. And so take pride, right? That crown. Take pride in, like you said, raising children who grew up in the fear and admonition of the Lord, who are productive members of society, who are going to then spread the love for the kingdom. Okay, you guys, I'm going to close out here. I'm going to just beg for forgiveness to my people who invited me. No more accepting invitations after my YouTube live stream, because we turned up in here, clearly. Anyway, guys, thank you for joining me. I appreciate all of you, everyone in my video. Join my email list. Click the link in my bio. Click the link in my video description, rather, I should say, so that you guys can get on my list for next Monday. I will see you guys next time. And
I'm giving you an award, sis, so go ahead.
What's that?
I'm giving you an award. So.
Thank you. All right, guys, until next time, tell someone that you love them, and hopefully it's very apparent just how much I love you.